Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome back to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour Julius Baer Generation Cup in 2022. We're still in the day one of the super event, and after the first day of this chess event, Magnus Carlsen is in the lead, but still I wanted to cover more games because so many great games have been played in the day one and I really had a tough time to decide which one I should show, but I decided to show this brilliant sharp tactical game between Vasyl, Ivanchuk and Anish Giri, and I'm really glad that the legendary Chucky is also here in the tournament because Vasyl is always trying to spice up the game. He's always trying to make some opportunities when it comes to attacking chess, and that's what we love to see, of course. In his games he always surprises you with some wild attacking elements, and although we have to say it, Vasyl, Ivanchuk and also Boris, Gelfand, these are of course much older players, lost some games yesterday, but actually they have shown that they still deserve to be in this tournament because they can, as I said, always surprise you. And for instance, in the game between Vasyl, Ivanchuk and Praggnanandhaa, Chucky had a completely winning game. He had a +6 evaluation against Pragu, but eventually blundered and lost the game, but it doesn't matter. I think still I think Vasyl, Ivanchuk showed really great attacking chess. He showed really great theoretical knowledge, and as I said, he'll still, I think, surprise many grandmasters in this super event in this beautiful Julius Baer Generations Cup. So let's see now what happened between Vasyl, Ivanchuk and Anish Giri. So we have also sort of a clash between two generations, and I think we see three generations here. We see this Vasyl, Ivanchuk, Boris, Gelfand generation. We'll see this Anish Giri, Magnus Carlsen, Jan-Krzysztof, Duda generation, but we'll see also this younger generation like Arjun, Erigaisi, Praggnanandhaa and also Niemann are here. So we'll see now the clash between older generation and also the current top grandmaster level. So we'll see now Vasyl, Ivanchuk versus Anish Giri. So let's see now what happened here. The legendary Chucky opened with the move knight to f3. We have here d5 by Anish Giri. We have d4, knight to f6, and after move c4 the game transposes into some queen's gambit stuff, and now after move e6 the game transposed into the queen's gambit decline. So knight to c3 played by Vasyl, Ivanchuk. We have bishop to b4, which becomes now the Ragos in defense. e3 we have kingside castling, and actually after move a3 this becomes now the same-ish variation of the Nimzo Indian defense. So the game transposed now many times into different stuff. Now after move a3 I think you have to make a decision. If you retreat to e7, then here in my opinion white has a good position. White has sort of an improved line. Will eventually play bishop to d2 or maybe even b3, bishop to b2, then knight to e5, bishop to d3 leads it, I think, to get a good setup here for white. So that's why I think after move a3 this is the correct way to go here. In the continuation, Anish played here simply here to move bishop to c3. After b takes c3, black in my opinion has now two choices. Either you'll break the position with the move c5 and will try to open the position, or you will go for the c4 pawn. You'll play some ideas of maybe knight to c6, then you'll play also knight to a5, b6, bishop to a6. So you will try to dominate here on this long diagonal, and basically this strategy to play the move knight to c6 is actually keeping a little bit here the dashwood bishop locked. So the dashwood bishop is a huge problem now of white. It is a little bit blocked out by its own pawn structure. So as I said, you have now basically two choices: knight to c6, or you break and enter immediately with the move c5. And here Anish Giri decided to play the move c5. In the continuation, we have now bishop to b2 by Vasyl, Ivanchuk. We have rook to e8, bishop to e2, and now after move knight to c6 finally kingside castle. So as I said, here the advantage of white is of course that you have the bishop pair, but we have to say it, this is not a good bishop pair because it is always blocked out. You look at this, the bishop on b2 is a huge positional problem. If you would have, of course, somehow clear the position in the center, if you could just imagine the position without any pawns in the center of the board, then it would be an optimal position for the bishops, but not this one. As I said, you have the bishop pair, but it's not an optimal one, so that's why here black has also some good chances in the game. So in the continuation, we have now knight to a5, attacking the pawn on c4. This move basically forces white to play now the move c takes d5, and after move e takes d5, look at this, the bishop is coming into the game. That's why I think Anish played so far really a beautiful opening line. As we said, although he doesn't have the bishop pair, but now the knights are very active. They can control both of the squares, c4, e4. The bishop is coming into the game, and still the position of the dark bishop is not improved. Still the dark bishop is blocked out by its own pawn structure. So in the continuation, d takes c5. So you see Vasyl is creating double pawns here, but with the idea to play finally c4 to get this bishop into the game. So he's not waiting with this position. He's trying desperately to get somehow the bishop into the game, and that's the way to go. I think this was a good choice here by Vasyl Ivanchuk. So knight to e4, we have queen to c2, and after bishop to f5, here you have also two choices by white. For instance, the engine here suggests the wild move c4 immediately. This leads into a complicated game. Really it would become a great tactical battle. In the continuation of the game, Vasyl Ivanchuk played rook to d1, which is in my opinion a more human way to go, because this is an optimal move. You're getting the rook where already the queen is, although there is this tension on this diagonal. The queen is a little bit endangered by the potential bishop's activity. But here I wanted to really show you what happens if you play, for instance, the move c4. The game becomes so wild, because now black should play here the wild move knight to g3. Look at this, the queen is hanging, and that's the idea behind this move rook to d1 that Vasyl Ivanchuk played. So you're getting out of the potential attack of the knight. So you see the knight is attacking now the rook on f1, but also the bishop is attacking the queen. But now after bishop to d3, bishop takes d3, queen to d3, you can maybe take out here the rook on f1, but now actually white would take out the pawn on d5. Now you have to play something like knight to e3, f takes e3, and you can be now the judge of this position. I'm not sure who is even better here, because okay, black has the situation where black is up the exchange, but still I would not love to face this pawn storm, especially when you connect the pawns here with the move e4. Then you play something like maybe rook to d1, rook to e1. Maybe in the later stage of the game you play even e5. You connect 3 pawns on the 5th rank, so this will be really wild position. So as I said, here you have 2 choices, c4 or rook to d1, here play by Vasyl Ivanchuk. So he choose to play this one, rook to d1, because now of course knight to g3 is not the problem anymore, because you play simply bishop to d3, bishop takes d3, knight takes queen takes d3, and now you have a problem where to go with the knight. In the previous line, of course, the rook was on f1 and you had the opportunity to take it. So that's why here the continuation, after move rook to d1, we have now knight to d6 by Anish Giri, and this was now a huge mistake by Anish. He blundered immediately already in the move 14, so from this point on I think the game was a one-way ticket. A better way to go is simply to play rook to c8. Again, you have to include the rook into the game. You're lining up the rook where already many of these pawns are, where the pawn on c5 is, where the pawn on c3 is. I'm not sure why Anish played this line. This was the way to go. Look at this, after rook to c8 you have to play now against c4, breaking here the position in the center, trying to of course get the bishop into the game. And now again the game becomes wild. Rook to c5, we play bishop to d4, you play rook to c8, and now with the move c5 here it should be, I think, a decent play for both sides. Now there are ideas of b6 to break and enter here, but at least I think you can somehow create here some wild attacking ideas on this diagonal. The knight can come into the game, so here it was a much better continuation for Anish Giri. She should have played at least the move rook to c8. But let's see what happens. Knight to d6 was played by Anish. Okay, you are creating this attack against the queen, but it doesn't matter. Vasyl Ivanchuk simply plays bishop to d3, simply competes now on this diagonal. We have bishop to d3, rook takes d3, and look at this, your knight is hanging now, so nothing especially happened with this tactical shot that Anish played. Where you're going with the knight here in the continuation, we have now knight to c4, and now rook to d1, doubling up the rooks on the d file. Look at this, the d5 is a weakness in the position. So from this point on, as I said, Vasyl Ivanchuk took over and has now a much better position. So what should we do here from black's perspective? Knight takes b2 doesn't make sense in my opinion, because you gave up a powerful knight for a bad bishop that was bad for the whole game. We have seen that the bishop on b2 was a bad piece, so you should never give up a good piece against your opponent's bad piece. So although the bishop had a potential activity on this diagonal, but you'll never be able to play c4 again, liberate the long diagonal. So that's why here Anish Giri also left the position like this, simply try to lock out further this bishop on b2. So in the continuation, rook to c8, which is now a little bit too late. Anish Giri had the opportunity to play this move, but but now it's not working because of rook to d5. We have queen to e7. Now knight to g5, threatened checkmate. You have to play now a g6, and this is really cool what Vasyl Ivanchuk is doing. He's forcing this move g6, and look at this. Okay, so far, as we said, this bishop is not getting into the game, but if we manage maybe to reroute somehow the bishop on this diagonal, maybe here, then it will, because of the move g6, your dark squares are vulnerable. So that's why I think in the continuation of the game you can create really some wild attacking chances also on dark squares. So in the continuation we have now h4. We have a brilliant move again by Vasyl Ivanchuk. He supports now the knight. He's trying now to play an annoying move, rook to d7, where of course then the pawn on f7 would be hanging. So rook to d8, competing on the d file. We have bishop to c1, we have h6, we have knight to f3, we have rook to d5, and now after rook to d5 we have queen to e4. Here Anish Giri had it enough. He tried now to simplify the game by trading off the queens, and he hoped probably for a continuation where he could maybe attack this weak pawn on c5, then maybe also grab the pawn on c3. So here he tried as we said, to simplify the game by trading off the queens off the board. So queen to e4, rook to e4, now knight to d4. Really again a good move by Vasyl Ivanchuk. He left the pawn on h4 unprotected, but he tried to include now the knight into the game, which was a good choice. The problem about black's position, I think, is that this knight is not coming into the game anymore. Whatever you do, knight to b3 or knight to c6, both of the squares are covered, so white will take it, and then we'll have a good game, especially on the 7th rank. And here Vasyl Ivanchuk is saying, okay, take the pawn on h4, but then your rook is a little bit loose on the board. Here, look at this. After rook to h4, we have now the move f3, and there is now huge tactical threat. You have to play something like g4. Look at this, g4, and then some ideas of e4, maybe bishop to f4, bishop to g3. The rook could actually be trapped here, so that's why you have to be careful. That's why rook to h5 was played by Anish Giri. He realized that the rook could be really trapped in this position, because f3 is taking over here the square e4. You don't have the escape route anymore for the rook. But after move rook to h5, here again a brilliant move by Vasyl Ivanchuk. e4, he's trying now to connect both of the pawns in the center of the board. We have rook to d5. Look at this. After e takes d5, this is not an isolated pawn anymore. These are dynamic passed pawns, and whatever you do, for instance, if you try b6, you simply pass through with the move c6. Then eventually you play something like pardon me, bishop to f4, d6, d7, c7, c8, d8. So you just push the pawns further and you promote them to queen for sure. So really great how Vasyl Ivanchuk played the game. Now he has really a compact position in central board. He has really a dynamic, also flexible pawn structure that could now create a maybe a promotion. So in the continuation, h5, f4, we have king to f8, and now king to f2, simply including the king into the game. We have now b6, which was maybe an inaccurate move here by Anish Giri, but even if you try some ideas of f6, still we can play some ideas of king to e2, then we'll play king to d3, and look at this, the knight is actually trapped here. The problem is also, as we said, this knight is a little bit loose on the board, so here it's a completely lost game here for black. So after king to f2, Anish played b6, we have c6 by Vasyl Ivanchuk. Here in the continuation we have king to e7, f5, great move again, because it liberates finally this bishop. This bishop is coming into the game. We have now knight to e5, and now after bishop to g5, a brilliant move here by Vasyl Ivanchuk. Anish Giri played f6, but now after move bishop to f6 in this position, Anish Giri resigned. There is no good counterplay anymore. If you take, of course, this pawn is unstoppable, so it was a completely winning game here for white. So great game by Vasyl Ivanchuk. Interesting ideas of the Ragos in Nimzo Indian for sure. You see how many problems Anish Giri got because of this tactical shot where he played this unnecessary move knight to d6. As we said, rook to c8 here in the position, rook to c5, then also continue the pressure around the square c3 would be the way to go. But unfortunately for Anish, he played a wild tactical shot which didn't give give him enough compensation. Bishop to d3, the bishop takes d3, rook to d3, and look at this. This rooks are getting lined up on the d file, and it was game over, I think, from this point on. So okay, great game by Vasyl Ivanchuk, though. We have to say it, he won games yesterday, he lost also games yesterday, but he still, I think, can surprise everyone. He still can destroy whenever he has his day. So still, he's the living legend, our famous Chucky, legendary Vasyl Ivanchuk. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. Really interesting ideas. If you want to see also yesterday game that we have covered, it was a beautiful game played by Arjun Erigaisi versus Magnus Carlsen. You can also check it out. Brilliant play by Magnus Carlsen for sure. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.